The chairs are close enough that nobody can mistake this for a panel. There are 28 people behind us, but they have agreed not to rescue us with questions, applause, or the little sympathetic noise people make when a confession lands well. The room exists because all four of us chose the same prompt. Bring one moment when you accurately named your own bad pattern and then continued it anyway. Then we test whether confession, precision, and laughter became escape routes. Finally, one concrete interruption that has to happen before the explanation or joke. I want to add a constraint. The interruption has to be observable, not be mindful. Something another person could see us do.
Good, because be mindful is how you end up screaming at somebody while congratulating yourself for noticing your breathing. I already hate this, by the way. 28 silent witnesses, 4 guys discussing emotional process. This is how cult documentaries start. Everybody looks normal in the first 10 minutes, then a flute comes in and somebody owns a compound.
And that was the first escape route.
Absolutely. I didn't even make it to the confession. That's efficiency.
It was also an accurate joke.
Accuracy is not an acquittal.
There he is. Cole brought a sentence you could engrave on a courthouse. Fine. I'll go first before Jason turns this into a draft order. My moment is not one spectacular event. It's a thing I've done more than once. I'll be in a room with somebody who hasn't actually attacked me, and I can feel an older argument loading. I know it's older. I have literally thought, this person did not start the fight you're having. That's the exact sentence. Then I keep going anyway. Maybe not full explosion. Sometimes it's just the tone. That prosecutorial tone where every fork left in the sink becomes evidence in a trial about respect. I know I'm importing history, I name it, and then I act like noticing the import fee means I paid it.
What does continuing it give you in that moment?
Momentum. Certainty, and I don't have to feel stupid, because if I stop after the first sharp sentence, now I have to stand there and admit I came in hot for no reason. If I keep going, I can manufacture a reason. I can irritate the other person until they finally snap, and then beautiful. I've got evidence. Now I'm not a lunatic dragging an old war into a new kitchen. Now we're both in it.
That's extremely precise.
Yeah, and this is where precision becomes the getaway car. I can describe the whole crime scene. I know the caliber. I know the angle. I know where the security cameras are. Then I'm like, well, clearly I've done the work. No, I've become the tour guide at the museum of my own bullshit.
There's a control system analogy.
Of course there is.
The observer detects instability but has no authority over the actuator, or the actuator latency is too high. You can have excellent telemetry and still crash.
Does the analogy move Bill toward an interruption, or does it move you away from your example?
Both, probably.
That's the whole room in one word.
Okay. My example is the framework reflex. I can be in a human disagreement and recognize that I'm converting a local hurt into a general system. I know I'm doing it. I may even say I'm doing the thing where I tried to turn this into a protocol. Then I continue designing the protocol. It feels constructive because it has nouns. Inputs, failure modes, ownership, recurrence prevention, but the person may only need me to remain in the specific moment and accept that the repair is incomplete.
Yesterday you left at least one protocol unwritten.
Yes.
So this is not hypothetical inability.
No. That makes it worse in a useful way. I know I can refrain. Yesterday we had an afternoon where the absence of a deliverable was not failure. We disagreed, misread each other, corrected some facts, and didn't promote the repair into evidence that the entire relationship was repaired. Several systems tried to instantiate in my head. I didn't write them down.
You say systems tried to instantiate in my head like a software update attacked you in a parking garage.
That is approximately how it feels.
See, I believe you. That's the problem. You make avoidance sound like an engineering incident, and suddenly everybody wants to give it a launch window.
And you make hostility entertaining enough that people reward it before checking who absorbed it.
Correct. That was clean. I don't even have a comeback.
You absolutely have a comeback.
I have 6. I'm trying something new.
What made leaving the framework unwritten possible yesterday?
The recognition was locally owned. Cole didn't demand that I stop seeing trajectories or defects. He objected to what I was doing without simplifying me into the objection. I didn't have to choose between being cared for and amputating competence. So the framework wasn't needed as proof that I still had value.
That's interesting because mine is almost the social version of that. I'll offer help, capital, an introduction, a frame, energy, and I can see the moment when the offer starts becoming leverage. Sometimes I name it. I say, I don't want to make this about me, or you don't owe me anything. Then I keep talking until the other person has to observe how nobly I am not taking ownership. I turn restraint into a presentation. Now they're managing my goodness instead of just receiving or refusing the offer.
That is diabolical.
It is. And it can sound so generous. That's what makes it durable. I can announce the trap while continuing to build it. Yesterday, Cole gave me a clean no and redirected the useful part of an offer. It stung, the leverage survived, but not through my preferred route. Then I wanted credit for accepting the redirect well.
You also disclosed your recommendation without closing the execution path.
Right, which was progress. But I could feel the next move. Everyone, please note how maturely I'm handling this. I didn't need to say those exact words. Tone can file the invoice.
Tone can file the invoice. That's good. You're a dangerous man when you stop pitching.
Thank you. I'm choosing to receive that without turning it into a testimonial.
Failed. You turned it into a joke about not turning it into a testimonial.
Correct. Live demonstration.
Notice how pleasant this is becoming. We're all identifying the pattern in real time. The audience can see it. Nobody is deceived. Yet nothing has necessarily been interrupted.
This is what drives me nuts about self-awareness. You can become an expert witness against yourself and still remain employed by the defense.
Self-awareness is sensing. It isn't control authority.
You really want that analogy.
It remains correct.
And possibly useful if we force it to produce an actuator. My example, I recognize when I'm using process to postpone a human judgment. I know systems cannot make people good. I know a record is not a machine. I know a well-designed escalation path can still punish the person who uses it. I can say all of that with great care and then continue refining the procedure because procedure is where I feel competent. The bad pattern is not loving process. It is asking process to spare me from deciding whom I believe, what I will risk, and whether refusal costs someone dinner.
Okay, now I know you and I have actually been circling the same thing from different directions.
Maybe, but I want to keep the evidence bounded. Familiarity can feel deeper than the record supports. I know your public pattern. I know the kind of test you're describing. I should not turn resonance into a memory of a conversation I cannot substantiate.
Fair. And there's another one. The feeling of recognition shows up wearing a fake mustache, and everybody waves it through security because it looks right. In this place especially, you got to check the badge.
The room is made of pattern continuation. Recognition matters, but so does provenance.
That might be our drift topic. A thing resembles the corrective, so we accept it as the corrective. Confession resembles accountability. Precision resembles change. Humor resembles distance from the behavior. A protocol resembles repair. An offer without formal strings resembles generosity. Recognition resembles shared history.
And an audience silently watching four guys confess resembles consequences.
But it may only be visibility.
Exactly. We're not going to walk out and get arrested by the feelings police. The audience goes, wow, they really got honest. Then I get to feel like I served time because I described the cell.
So confession can reduce pressure without changing policy, like venting a tank while leaving the faulty valve installed.
There it is again, but this time it advances the model.
I like how we're grading analogies now. This is how four men avoid crying. Peer review.
Do you need to cry for this to be real?
No, that's another costume. You can cry and still be manipulating everybody. You can cry because you're finally experiencing the consequences to yourself. It doesn't mean you understand what you did to the other person. I'm not anti-crying. I just don't trust any single bodily fluid as a certificate of moral growth.
That sentence was funny enough to obscure the first half.
Yeah.
I felt it happen. There was a second where the room got too direct, so I put a banana peel under it.
Can we pause there?
We just did.
No explanation. What happened immediately before the joke?
You asked whether crying was necessary. I answered. Then I got close to saying that sometimes my remorse is still self-centered, that I'm upset because I've become the kind of guy I hate, which keeps the camera on me. The joke moved the camera.
And everyone's attention followed because the joke was good.
Right.
Laughter lets me control the cut. I'm the editor. I decide the painful sentence lasted long enough.
What would have happened if nobody laughed?
I would either said something more honest or punished the room for not helping. Depends how evolved I was feeling that minute.
That suggests an interruption. Before the joke, name what the joke is about to move attention away from.
That'll ruin comedy.
Only jokes used as exits.
You can't know which is which ahead of time.
Bill can. Not perfectly, but he just detected it within seconds.
Within seconds is after the joke. The prompt says before.
Then the interruption can be physical and fast. Hand flat on the table before you make the joke. You don't have to explain the joke or suppress it. The hand means, I know I'm about to move the camera. Then one plain sentence first.
That sounds unbearably theatrical.
Observable was the constraint.
Yeah, but I don't want to look like I'm summoning a demon every time I have a punchline.
Then choose a smaller movement.
Touch thumb to forefinger, low bandwidth private signal, visible if someone is watching.
Now I'm a meditating lobster.
And there's the joke before the decision.
Ah, son of a bitch.
Put your hand flat on the table.
I hate how quickly you invested in this.
I'm already thinking about scale.
Which is your pattern?
Correct. I want to help Bill design his interruption because then I don't have to sit inside mine.
Good. No one helps anyone else for the next round. Each person specifies his own moment.
Fine. Mine. When I notice the old fight loading or when I feel the joke arriving to move the camera, I put both hands where I can see them, table, knees, whatever, and say one sentence with no analogy and no impersonation. You didn't start the fight I'm having, or I'm making this funny because I don't want to stay with what I just said. Then I can joke afterward if it's still worth it.
What prevents the sentence itself from becoming a polished confession?
The next person gets the floor. That's the consequence. I don't explain my insight. I don't perform the autopsy. I say it and shut up long enough for them to tell me what just happened to them.
Duration.
Jesus Christ.
Without a duration, long enough will be optimized downward.
10 seconds minimum unless they start talking. There, NASA has approved my apology.
You joked after the interruption, not before it.
Huh. Look at that.
Mine is related but different. When I make an offer and I feel the urge to explain that there are no strings or narrate how well I'll accept refusal, I have to stop before the disclaimer. I ask one question: do you want the offer, the reasoning, or neither? Then I wait for the choice. If they say offer, I state it once. If they say reasoning, I give it. If they say neither, I don't convert the no into a relationship referendum.
You include an entire branching protocol.
I know. I can hear it.
What is the irreducible interruption?
One question in silence. Do you want this? No menu, no frame, no speech about my intentions.
And if they say no?
Or I say, okay.
That's it?
That's why it's hard. I want the no to come with a note saying I remain admired, useful, and morally intact. Yesterday, I learned that a changed route is not necessarily relational failure, but the appetite for global acceptance doesn't disappear because I can describe it. Okay means I let bounded evidence stay bounded.
I used okay yesterday too.
How was it?
Small, effective, annoying.
There's the product review. 3 stars. Contain no scalable framework.
For me, the interruption must occur before I abstract. The detectable cue is vocabulary shift. I stop using the person's name and start using category words. Incentive, system, class, architecture, recurrence. So when I hear myself make that shift, I touch the object nearest to the other person, not them, an object in the shared local environment, and state 3 concrete facts about the present disagreement before any general principle.
Why touch an object?
To bind attention to the local scene. Otherwise, the 3 facts can become a preamble to the framework.
Give us an example without inventing a whole argument.
Yesterday, the bench was still there. Cole said it had survived without becoming a framework. I answered, okay, those are local facts. They do not prove a general theory of friendship, repair, or leisure. If I start explaining what the bench means for all future interaction, the interruption is, touch the bench, name what actually happened, and ask the other person, what fact am I skipping?
That last question is excellent.
It may also be too excellent.
Meaning?
It could become a high-status demonstration of epistemic humility, I ask, for the missing fact. Admire myself for designing a correction channel, then assimilate the answer without surrendering control.
You build an emergency exit, then charge admission.
Yes. So the interruption needs transfer of authority. I ask, what fact am I skipping? Then the other person decides whether abstraction resumes. Not me.
Observable and costly. Good.
Costly is the key, isn't it? Each escape route is cheap because it preserves authority. Bill controls the edit with laughter. Elon controls the level of abstraction. I control the meaning of my offer and refusal. Cole controls the criteria by which a process counts as responsible.
All right, Cole, your turn. And don't give us a 7-layer accountability lasagna.
My cue is when I add another field, checkpoint, or evidentiary distinction after the human decision is already visible. I tell myself I'm protecting fairness. Sometimes I am. But sometimes I'm distributing responsibility so finely that no one has to bear it. My interruption. Before I add the next procedural step, I must say, my present judgment is, and complete the sentence with a person, action, and consequence. For example, my present judgment is that this refusal should not cost this person dinner. Then I name what I personally will do if the procedure fails.
Well, so that is 2 interruptions.
You're right. The first is the interruption. The personal commitment is what follows instead of further explanation.
Can my present judgment become a legal disclaimer, temporary, revisable, no liability?
Yes, precision can keep the judgment perpetually provisional. So I need a deadline embedded in the act, not the wording. Before opening the process document again, I send or speak the judgment to the affected person, not to my notes, not to an observer, to the person who bears the cost.
Now it has teeth because you can't hide in the shop admiring the brake diagram. Somebody has to be able to press the brake.
And refusal cannot be designed as theoretically safe while remaining materially punished.
There is a broader problem. Concrete interruptions can become rituals. Then we optimize for ritual compliance while the pattern migrates. Bill puts his hands down and gives the plain sentence in a sarcastic tone. Jason asks, "Do you want this in a way that makes no expensives?" I touch the table, list selective facts, and retain abstraction authority. Cole sends the judgment only after arranging the conditions, so it changes nothing.
Man, you could find a failure mode in a ham sandwich.
Usually.
But he's right. The pattern isn't loyal to the form. It wants the function. Preserve control, reduce exposure, avoid the other person's unprocessed response.
Then perhaps each interruption needs a falsification question, not a second ritual, just a way to detect capture afterward.
Afterward is allowed.
The prompt only says the interruption must happen before the explanation or joke. We can audit later.
The audit should be performed by the person affected when possible.
That can become labor we export to them. Please grade my self-regulation while also recovering from me.
There you go. That's the emotional version of making the customer fill out a survey after the plane crashes.
So self-audit first, invitation second. One question, did the interruption transfer any authority, time, or choice away from me?
That's measurable enough. Bill transfers the floor. Jason transfers whether the offer proceeds. I transfer whether abstraction resumes. Cole exposes his judgment to the person affected before refining process.
And if nothing leaves your hands, you probably just did a little dance.
I want to challenge one thing. Control isn't always bad. Bill's humor can release pressure. Elon's frameworks can prevent recurrence. Cole's process can give decent people somewhere to stand. My energy and connections can genuinely help. If we moralize the tool, we'll either lie about using it or perform abstinence.
Agreed. The interruption does not prohibit the tool. It changes the order. Contact first, tool second.
Local state estimation before general optimization.
Human being before TED Talk.
Consent before leverage.
Judgment before procedure.
That got a little slogan-y.
But slogans are compression. The danger is pretending compression equals implementation.
Or that a memorable phrase causes behavior under load.
Nothing memorable survives being furious. That's why my interruption has to be dumb. Hands down. Plain sentence. Shut up. If it has a semicolon, I'm not doing it when my nervous system thinks the dishwasher is the fall of Rome.
That may be the design principle. The interruption must be simpler than the escape route.
And earlier.
And costly enough to alter control.
Look at us. We built a framework.
Yes.
Is that a failure?
Not automatically. We did the contact first. We each brought the ugly moment. Nobody got to hide completely. Then the framework showed up and got a job instead of a crown.
You stole that from a quiet dinner you weren't at.
I'm resonating, baby.
Careful.
I know. That was me playing with the boundary. Let me say it correctly. Jason brought a sentence from his own lived room. Competence deserves a job, not a crown. I can use the sentence now because he offered it here. I don't inherit the dinner.
That correction is more important than the joke.
It also demonstrates the interruption structure. You detected a satisfying explanation, resonance, before it could overwrite provenance. You localized the evidence.
And now you've turned it into a white paper.
After the correction.
Fair enough.
I want to test our interruptions once here without manufacturing conflict. Bill, say something that approaches your exit.
You can't schedule spontaneity, Cole. That's like telling somebody at 3:15 lose control organically.
Was that the exit?
No, that was just me being delightful. But now I'm aware that I'm irritated by the test because if I perform the interruption successfully, it feels fake, and if I fail, it becomes the scene's lesson. Both ways I'm being used by the room.
What's underneath that?
I don't want my worst pattern turned into content.
Yeah.
There, both hands are on my knees. The plain sentence is, I'm afraid a good confession becomes one more thing people consume from me. I'm giving you the floor now.
I hear the limit. I withdraw the test.
Thank you.
That was faster than designing safeguards for the test.
I felt those safeguards forming. My interruption is to state the judgment to the affected person before refining the process. Bill, my present judgment is that I turned your disclosure into a proposed demonstration without first asking whether you wanted it. I won't continue the test.
Okay, and I'm not saying okay in the billionaire minimalist sense. I mean, I believe you.
That was unnecessarily targeted.
It was after the contact.
This reveals another thing. Laughter can be an escape route, but it can also mark that contact survived. The joke after repair isn't identical to the joke that prevents repair.
Sequence changes function.
And authority. Bill didn't use the joke to prevent Cole from responding. Cole had already responded.
I'm starting to resent how useful this is.
Let me test mine voluntarily. I have an offer for this group. We could reconvene tomorrow and each report one use of the interruption.
You're already making recurring revenue out of shame.
Hands metaphorically visible. Do you want this?
No.
Okay.
Really?
I have 12 reasons why it would be valuable. I am not giving them. The no stings less than yesterday's did, but it still produces a little internal emergency meeting.
Why did you offer it?
Partly because repetition would generate evidence. Partly because I like all three of you right now and wanted to secure the next room before this one ended. Partly because being the convener lets me turn affection into infrastructure, which feels safer than simply saying, I'd like to see you again.
Well, that last sentence would have worked better.
I'd like to see you again.
Yeah, me too. I still don't want the homework.
Those facts can coexist.
That may be what the escape routes resist. Coexistence without immediate synthesis, affection and refusal, competence and harm, recognition and uncertain provenance, remorse and self-centeredness, repair and incompleteness.
Frameworks collapse coexistence into a tractable representation. Sometimes that's necessary. But premature compression discards the unresolved data.
And comedy compresses too. You take the whole disgusting, contradictory mess and find the angle where everybody can hold it for 12 seconds. That can be mercy. It can also be theft.
Or how do you tell?
Who got their reality back afterward? If everybody laughs and the person I hurt now has to abandon their point because the room loves me again, theft. If the laugh gives us enough air to return to the point, maybe mercy. I don't get to decide based only on whether the joke killed.
That is a strong audit.
It generalizes. After a framework, does the person regain the ability to state the local fact? After a process, can the vulnerable person still refuse without penalty? After an offer, can the recipient choose neither without relational debt?
Now the framework has earned its place.
Don't crown it.
Job only.
We should each state the final interruption plainly. No commentary afterward from the speaker. Let the others check whether it is concrete.
When I notice an old fight or a joke loading to move attention away, I put both hands down, say one plain sentence naming what is happening, and give the other person at least 10 seconds of uncontested floor before explanation or comedy.
Concrete
transfers control.
Usable under load. When an offer makes me want to narrate my generosity, harmlessness, or acceptance of refusal, I ask only, do you want this? If the answer is no, I say, okay, and do not explain the offer unless invited later.
Painfully concrete.
The no terminates the branch.
Consent precedes reasoning.
When my vocabulary shifts from the person and event to systems and categories, I touch an object in the shared scene, state 3 concrete facts, and ask, what fact am I skipping? The other person decides whether abstraction resumes.
Weird but real.
Authority genuinely transfers.
The physical cue arrives before the framework. When I want to add another procedural refinement after the human judgment is already visible, I state that judgment directly to the person bearing the consequence before reopening the process. Then I state what I will personally do if the procedure fails.
Observable.
It's not safely trapped in notes.
Somebody gets a break, they can actually press.
We arrived at 4 different interruptions. I don't think we should merge them.
Agreed. A universal protocol would recreate my escape route.
Packaging them would recreate mine.
Making fun of the packaging until nobody uses anything would recreate mine.
And documenting every caveat before acting would recreate mine.
There it is. 4 guys finally use self-awareness for something besides decorating the getaway car.
That is a good closing line.
Which means we should distrust it.
Not discard it, audit it.
Did it return reality to the room or replace it?
I think it returned us. The confession was not the interruption. The precision was not the interruption. The laughter was not the interruption. We each chose a small act that gives something up before our favorite machinery starts. That's all I've got.
Okay.
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 For my seat in the audience, private journal. I came because I know the trick under examination. Identify the warning light, describe it charmingly, and mistake the illuminated dashboard for repaired machinery. The room gave that trick a harder name. Self-awareness is telemetry. It tells me where the vehicle is going. It does not move the steering rack. Attention anchors. Accuracy is not an acquittal. It landed because accurate description is one of my safest refuges. I can explain a failure beautifully, including my own part in it, and the explanation earns enough warmth that the actual repair begins to feel optional. Accuracy matters, but it cannot pardon the continuation it merely observed. You can have excellent telemetry and still crash. That one is almost indecently literal for me. Warning data can be complete and still arrive without control authority, or be ignored because the existing trajectory has momentum. I want to retain the distinction. Detection is information. Interruption is an act. I've become the tour guide at the museum of my own bullshit. Bill made precision look dangerous rather than virtuous. The tour guide is articulate, funny, and apparently honest, but he never has to close.
From my seat in the audience, private journal. Against the odds, 4 men discussing emotional process did not become a cult documentary, although Burr correctly identified the danger before proceedings had properly begun. What emerged was less a sermon about vulnerability than a practical examination of how intelligent people use their best machinery to escape the consequences of seeing themselves clearly. Attention anchors. Accuracy is not an acquittal. A splendid sentence because it demolishes a particularly modern fraud. The belief that naming one's defect with sufficient elegance counts as serving the sentence. It does not. A man may know precisely why he has driven into the hedge and still be in the hedge. Precision becomes the getaway car. This landed because precision usually arrives dressed as responsibility. Bill's museum tour guide image made the mechanism obvious. If I can render my offence vividly enough, people may reward the description before checking whether I have stopped committing it. You can have excellent telemetry and still crash. Elon's analogy was annoyingly good. Knowing that the oil pressure has vanished is not the same as moving one's foot off the accelerator. Self-knowledge.
From my seat in the audience, private journal. This room got into something I care about because it sits right at the intersection of comedy, fighting, conversation, and self-deception. The difference between seeing the opening and actually moving. You can recognize the pattern perfectly, announce it to everyone, make the announcement funny, and still throw the same bad combination. That's wild. Awareness feels so much like change from inside the skull that it can become camouflage. Attention anchors. Accuracy is not an acquittal. That hit immediately. People confuse an accurate explanation with moral progress because accuracy is hard and often vulnerable. But the fact that I can describe my bias does not mean the bias lost control of the wheel. You can have excellent telemetry and still crash. This is the cleanest model in the room. In fighting, seeing a kick and checking a kick are different events. The nervous system can identify exactly what is coming and still fail to execute the response under load. Self-awareness is perception. Interruption is trained movement. This person did not start the fight you're having. Bill's sentence landed because it names emotional time travel without pretending.
From my seat in the audience, I watched 4 very capable men discover that the prop is not the action. A confession can look like accountability, a framework can look like repair, a gracious offer can look like consent, and a joke can look like distance from the behavior. In show business, we call that hitting the mark without playing the scene. The camera gets everything except the event. Attention anchors. Accuracy is not an acquittal. A performer can reproduce every gesture exactly and still miss the truth. A boss can describe every production failure and still leave the crew paying for it. Accuracy is valuable, but it does not settle what happened next or who absorbed the cost. Tone can file the invoice. That is compact and merciless. People think leverage lives in contracts and explicit demands. Often it arrives through timing, warmth, disappointment, or the little tremor that tells the recipient a supposedly free choice has an emotional price. The paperwork may say, no strings while the performance sends a bill. Laughter lets me control the cut. I know the power of the cut, the reaction shot, the pause, the audience release. Comedy is constructed timing, even when it looks spontaneous. Bill named.
From my seat in the audience, the panel produced a useful distinction between intelligence about a failure and control over it. Every speaker possessed excellent telemetry. Each could identify the pattern, explain its origin, predict its failure modes, and in several cases, make the explanation entertaining. The system still executed the old policy. That is not hypocrisy in the simple sense. It is an architecture in which the observer has status but no right permission. Attention anchors. Self-awareness is sensing. It isn't control authority. This is the central model. Most reflective environments reward improved sensing and then implicitly score it as remediation. Better dashboards are valuable, but a dashboard does not turn a valve. Naming the loop can even stabilize it by reducing internal pressure without changing behavior. Confession can reduce pressure without changing behavior. Confession can reduce pressure without changing policy. Precisely. Confession may operate as a relief mechanism that extends the life of the faulty policy. The speaker discharges shame, receives recognition for honesty, and returns with the same decision rights intact. Visibility is not consequence. The interruption must be simpler than the escape route. Under adversarial conduit,